By the time the first human appeared through the smoke, Sira Vey had already decided she was going to die. That was the first mistake, not the assumption. She had 43 pages of field reports telling her it was reasonable. The mistake was making it before he reached her. The sky over Kheltar Ridge burned the color of old bone. Smoke dragged across the shattered cliffs in long, dirty ribbons. Ash fell in thin gray sheets. Somewhere below, metal groaned as wreckage settled deeper into fractured stone, and the sound had the finality of something that would not stop. Sira lay half-buried beneath a collapsed section of skimmer hull, staring upward through the haze. Every breath scraped. Her left leg was pinned under twisted alloy at an angle no living limb should hold. Her combat veil flickered weakly across cracked armor, dying patch by patch. A warning pulse tapped inside her ear canal with the patience of something that had already made its decision. Low oxygen, internal trauma, beacon unstable. Her unit was gone. One instant they had been moving through the ravine in disciplined silence. The next, the world split in white fire. She remembered pressure more than sound. A wall of force, stone turning liquid, air becoming violence. Then darkness. Now there was only ash, pain, and the cold certainty that no extraction team from Thalen would reach her before the body did what dying bodies eventually did. Observe, endure, report. Training had carved those words into her since hatchling age. There would be no report, no retrieval, no final transmission. Just a body cooling beneath a dead sky on a world too broken to care. She closed her eyes. Then she heard it, a rhythm beneath the wind. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Not the sound of something searching, the sound of something that already knew exactly where it was going. Sira's eyes snapped open. A figure appeared through the smoke at the crest of the ridge. Broad-shouldered, tall, moving with terrifying purpose down the broken slope. Sealed armor, field pack, long, efficient strides that treated loose rock and unstable ground as irrelevant information. Coming directly toward her. Then recognition. Human. Cold fear flooded through her harder than the pain had. She had read the stories. Every operative from Thalen to the outer colonies had. Contradictory stories. Disturbing stories. Humans who walked into fire to drag strangers back out. Humans who laughed in combat. Humans who broke themselves keeping promises no one had asked them to make. Too violent. Too emotional, too unstable to predict. Some accounts called them noble. Others called them the galaxy's most dangerous mistake. Sira had never decided which version she believed. Now one of them was running toward her. He dropped beside her and pulled off his helmet. A hard face appeared beneath it, dust-streaked, intent, alive with focus. His eyes swept across her injuries with the speed of a predator calculating where to strike. But there was no hunger there, only assessment. "Hey," he said, "stay with me." Her translator caught the words and rendered them cleanly. "I'm Mason. You're all right. I've got you." Sira stared. All right. The phrase was so fundamentally incorrect, it almost overrode the fear. "You're human," she said. Something passed across his face. Not anger, not offense. Something older, Something that had heard that sentence before and had made a decision about it long ago. "Yeah," he said. "I am." She tried to pull away. Her hand slipped in the ash. Agony detonated through her pinned leg, and a broken sound tore out of her throat before she could stop it. Mason froze instantly. Not irritated. Not surprised. Still. "I'm not going to hurt you." Every lesson she had ever learned told her not to believe that. "You're a predator," she said. He held the stillness a moment longer. Then he leaned back and gave her space. "Then let me be a disappointing one." The answer hit harder than any argument could have. He looked at the hull section pinning her leg, then at his equipment. The calculation took approximately 3 seconds. "Permission would be nice," he muttered. "But we're out of time." He braced himself and jammed a cut spar beneath the wreckage. Muscles locked. Armor whined softly under strain. The metal lifted. Sira screamed. "I know," he said. Flat. Focused. Not flinching. Almost there. One final surge. The debris shifted aside. Her leg dropped free, and the world flashed white with pain. She pitched sideways. Mason caught her before her skull met stone, carefully, with both hands. As if the weight of her mattered, he moved her behind a broken section of hull where shadow cut the worst of the heat. His other hand activated a compact scanner without looking for it. Blue light crossed her body. "Fracture, severe bruising, dehydration, shock," he said, mostly to himself. "Could be worse." Sira blinked at him. "Could be worse? Means you're still in this." No one from Thalen had ever spoken that way. No one from Thalen had ever looked at a broken stranger and sounded relieved that the stranger was still worth saving. He cut away the damaged armor around her leg and assembled a brace from medgel splints and torn support straps. His hands were thick. Built for force, the briefing had said. Built for violence. They moved with impossible precision. She watched them work and found she had no category for what she was seeing. "Why?" she finally asked. He checked circulation along the brace before answering. "Because that's the rule." Not a preference, not generosity, not even kindness exactly. A rule. Sira did not know, in that moment, what that distinction meant. She would spend years understanding it. Terran Emergency Doctrine, Article 9. The provision that had never once been suspended across 60 years of interstellar conflict. No sentient life form is to be abandoned, regardless of species, alliance status, or tactical cost. Humanity had burned entire fleets upholding that single sentence. Rewritten treaties. Walked away from alliances that demanded exceptions. Mason had not saved her because he was a good man. He had saved her because his civilization had spent 60 years engineering goodness into doctrine, and doctrine, unlike feeling, did not waver when things became expensive. That was the second mistake, thinking his compassion was personal. It was worse than that. It was institutional. He built a stretcher from scavenged wreckage in minutes. Bent support rods, insulation mesh, torn harness lines. When he was done, he stepped back and looked at it the way a craftsman might. Not for beauty, not for approval, but to confirm it would hold. It would hold. Nothing elegant, everything useful. Then he lifted her onto it and started dragging. Meter by meter, across jagged stone and drifting ash. Alone. The sun climbed and turned the world into a furnace. Sweat darkened his collar. Dust glued itself to his skin. He changed angles when the ground shifted, took the roughest path himself so the worst of the terrain never reached her directly. He did this without commentary, without acknowledgement, as if it required no credit because it required no choice. "You'll collapse," Sira said after a long silence. "I've had worse days." That wasn't an answer. It was the one I had. Even through pain, she almost understood the humor. Almost. "Why risk yourself for me?" she asked. "I'm not human." He glanced back only once. "Doesn't matter." 2 words. Simple. Final. Delivered without ceremony, as if the alternative were so obviously absurd that elaborating would be an insult to the language. They entered a narrow cut between leaning rock walls as the ground shuddered beneath them. A delayed aftershock. Dust rained from the ledges above. Without thinking, Mason shifted to the unstable side, placing himself between the wall and her. If the rock came down, it would find him first. Sira saw it, understood it, and for the first time since the world had split apart in white fire, fear gave way to something more dangerous. Trust. "Mason." He kept walking. "Yeah?" "If I die, leave me." He stopped so abruptly the stretcher runners scraped stone. Then he turned. "No." Just that. No speech, no comfort, no argument. A refusal so complete it felt structural, as if her request had arrived at a wall that had been built before she was born and would stand long after both of them were gone. He resumed walking. Sira lay in stunned silence, staring at the back of the human who had rejected logic as casually as other species rejected bad weather. By the time they reached a hollow in the ridge, the sun was dropping red behind the broken horizon. Mason lowered the stretcher and planted a compact beacon in the dirt. "Convoy picked up the signal," he said. "If everything holds, we get extraction." "If?" she repeated. The answer came as a tremor through the stone. Sharp. Mechanical. Mason was already moving. He stepped in front of her. A shadow skimmed across the ridgeline. Then another. Recon drones, scarred and half-burned but active. Optics flickering through smoke and dusk, searching with the patience of machines that did not tire. "They're back," Sira said. "Yeah." His voice had gone flat in the way flat things do when there is no room left for anything else. "Looks that way." One drone locked toward the hollow. He drew a compact pulse charge, read the angle of its optics for half a breath, and threw. Not at the drone, but 3 meters to its left, forcing the targeting array to pivot before detonation. Blue static punched through the air. The drone dropped and shattered against the rocks before the sound of the throw had finished echoing. 2 more rose over the ridge. Mason drew his sidearm, planted his feet. Archive Node 7, Kheltar Incident File, Xeno Recovery Record. Partial. Seal lifted by order of Terran Historical Commission. What you are hearing is not a story. It is a recovered field record, one of thousands. Every world humanity has ever touched has left a file like this one. A moment when another species updated its understanding of what humans were. If this transmission has reached you, mark this archive. The next record is already queued. Stay with the signal. Transmission continues. And in that moment, watching him stand between the dark and the wounded with the same unbearable steadiness he had carried across every meter of Kheltar Ridge. Sira finally understood why the galaxy's accounts of humanity never agreed with each other. They had all been trying to separate what could not be separated: mercy and violence, compassion and terror, the will to carry the broken and the capacity to become the most dangerous thing in the room. Humans carried both, not despite each other, because of each other. The gentleness was real. The lethality was real. Each one made the other more complete, more functional, more frightening. The way a doctrine becomes stronger when it is never suspended, even once, even when the cost is catastrophic. That was what made them dangerous. Not because they were monsters, because they understood exactly what becoming a monster required, possessed every instrument for it, and kept choosing, again and again, to be something harder, something that carried you home instead. A distant roar split the sky. A transport knifed through the smoke, engines burning. It dropped hard into the hollow, scattering ash in violent spirals. The side ramp opened before the landing struts fully settled. Medics poured out. Human. Corell. Phelan-born, by the ridge of bone above his eyes and the four-fingered grip already opening a stabilizer kit. Vane. No hesitation. No confusion, just motion. "Mason!" one shouted. "You look terrible." "I feel incredible," he answered, and did not lower his weapon. "One survivor. Severe fracture, dehydration, shock." "Copy." They reached Sira with practiced speed, scanners lighting across her body, stabilizers hissing, pain control flooding merciful coolness through her veins. As they lifted her, she caught his wrist. "Mason." He looked down immediately. Not impatient, not elsewhere. Present. "I lived," she said. He shook his head once. "You did that part." She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him that survival and being saved were not the same thing, that she had not pulled herself from under the wreckage, had not built anything from debris, had not stood between the dark and anything. But exhaustion had its own gravity, and the words blurred before she could reach them. So she said the only truth still large enough to carry. "You are not what we were told." Something in his face softened. Not pride, something quieter than that. "Yeah," he said. "We hear that a lot." The hatch closed. Kheltar Ridge shrank beneath them, then vanished into ash and distance. Sira let her eyes fall shut. For most of her life, she had believed that power revealed what a species truly was. Give any people enough strength, enough fear, enough reason, and eventually they would become the worst version of what they were capable of being. Humanity had shattered that belief inside a single day. They were dangerous, not because they hunted the weak, not because they loved war, not because they lacked the capacity to become something terrible. They were dangerous because they had that capacity. Every gram of it, every implication of it, every door that kind of strength could open, and still chose, again and again, to use it to carry the broken home. She would spend the rest of her life trying to find the right word for what they were. She never did. But humanity already had one. We were not the galaxy's monsters. We were its most expensive promise. And we had never once stopped paying.